creatures in Minecraft seem to have a knack for climbing up and getting themselves stuck on cliff sides. When I noticed that, I had the suspicion that creatures in Minecraft might be biased in which direction they walk, and that's what this colorful mountain thing in the thumbnail is supposed to be visualizing. So I wrote a Python script to actually go through like block by block on the surface and run some calculations and figure out how likely a creature is to try to pathfind uphill or downhill from that position. I'll get into the math, for like how I tried to figure that out in a few minutes, but for now we'll look at the colorful thing. And I have a science experiment that should be pretty fun to watch. Just so you know what's up, lime green wool here means that a creature standing here that's wandering around is 2 times as likely or more to try to pathfind uphill. And then oppositely, any creature standing on black wool, so on the little hilltops here, is 2 times as likely or more to try to pathfind downhill. So the shape of the terrain can actually like influence whether animals go up or down, and this can lead them to like gravitate towards cliff sides. And then, like you could guess, red, orange, yellow, just a spectrum. So yellow and orange means slightly likely to try to pathfind uphill, and red means slightly likely to try to pathfind downhill. Okay, this is the experiment I wanted to do. So I've loaded up this colorful mountain thing with a bunch of pigs. Creatures will only wander around in Minecraft if there's a player within 32 blocks of them. So I have just a bunch of little bot players floating up above everything, so every pig will be within 32 blocks of a player. And if the math stuff is correct and the colors are correct, then what we should see is, pigs in green areas will kind of move upwards until they hit a red-black area, and then just kind of hover on the border of that. Then we can speed up the game too. It looks like a few of the pigs wandered off out of range. That's just a probability. It's not guaranteed to go uphill, it just means more likely. Looks like we pretty much got what we expected. Is, the pigs all started out down there, and now they've all bunched themselves up at the tops. They are a bit more concentrated on the hilltops than I expected. I was expecting them to bunch up more so in like the red-orange areas. All right, well, I guess that at least confirms the suspicion that they prefer to walk uphill. The rest of the video is just going to be kind of almost like science experiments and a little bit of math. It was just my attempt to try to figure out exactly how much they prefer to walk uphill and in what types of terrain they do. So I guess the first thing we got to talk about is the pathfinding algorithm and how mobs actually decide where they're going to walk. The first part of this is that they actually won't try to walk to transparent or non-full blocks. So they won't try to walk towards stairs or glass. And secondly, they won't try to walk to blocks that are more than 10 away. So I've marked that in red and green here. So if we load up our pigs right here, these will be our test dummies. These solid blocks here, these wool blocks, those are fine, mobs can pathfind to them, are close enough to the first row of pigs that they should be able to try to pathfind to them. We'll run the game at, I think this is a volume off kind of video. Yeah, and we got 2 running over. There's a third. Yeah, and sure enough, it's kind of weird. They don't try to walk right on top of the wool. Usually they'll walk a block or half a block away when they walk over. So this is 10 blocks out from where they were sitting right here. So their sideways range, 10 blocks. Next experiment was just to try to figure out if that was a spherical radius of 10, or if it's more like a rectangular cube shape that they try to pathfind in. Cube shape would have been easier to code, and sure enough, it is a cube shape they try to pathfind to. So these wool blocks will be in range. If it's a cube shape that they try to pathfind to, because they're within 10 blocks in the X direction, 10 blocks in the Z direction. But these corners of wool blocks here are further than 10 blocks away in as the crow flies, so to speak. And then lastly, I just tried to figure out how tall that rectangular cube shape thing is. So that's what this experiment is, and I found the cutoff. So we have some wool blocks here that are 7 above the block they're standing on, and some wool blocks here that are 8 above. And I've run this experiment, I don't know, 5-6 times. It's enough standard deviations for me, and All of them always walk to the 7 high one. So any blocks 8 high above, the block they're standing on, I'm just presuming is out of reach for them. And then same thing seems to hold in the downward direction. So what that means is if you have, in the middle there, we have a white block and a pink one that's symbolizing our pig and the block it's standing on. This is the shape of all the blocks they can attempt to pathfind to. So it's 21 wide, 21 long, and 15 blocks high. Interestingly, it's centered not on the creature itself, but on the block the creature is standing on. So what I did here was I just have a little staircase, so we'll put some pigs on it. And at any given point on this staircase, there's exactly one row of solid blocks down here on this like lower staircase that is within their pathfinding range. What this means essentially is that they'll just sit there like dummies, but then when they do lock on to a block they want to pathfind to in that one row that's within their range, they'll actually move one block upward. And the reason I think that is just because they're closer to the block they're trying to pathfind to if they move one up on the staircase, interestingly. So they're actually getting closer to a block that's beneath them by moving upwards. And sure enough, if they were to stand right here, they would be just a little bit closer to that row of blocks than if they were down here. So what I tried to figure out next was, if they're on, this white step here, where will solid blocks lead them uphill from, and where will solid blocks lead them downhill from? Specifically, you can see these solid blocks here. They're leading them downhill from this white step they're starting on. So I've marked this row of solid blocks with red. Similarly, if I were to put like a solid row of blocks right here, I mark this one with green because it'll lead them to walk uphill from where they're standing. Obviously, this is a pretty controlled, experiment, because no mountain is going to have like a perfect 7 wide, 1 forward, 1 up staircase. You can kind of see, there's a pattern here. Orange means that row of blocks didn't lead them either uphill or downhill. So what kind of looks like is going on is you have the staircase, right? And that's like a flat surface. And then you almost have an invisible staircase meeting it at a right angle. And then any solid blocks like in here above that right angle invisible staircase will lead them uphill. And anything in like this triangular region beneath will lead them downhill. And that's the area marked in red here. And then what I did was I just counted up, how many blocks are there that can lead them uphill and how many blocks are there that can lead them downhill. The ratio turned out to be 95 to 48, almost exactly 2. In other words, if you have a creature in Minecraft and it's on a staircase that's like 1 block forward, 1 up, perfect staircase, they will be 2 times as likely to pathfind upwards on that staircase as downwards. That's what I was trying to represent with this graph here. And then obviously any staircase that's like, steeper than 1 forward, 1 up, they won't be able to walk up because there'd be like 2 high jumps they'd have to make. With one exception though, which is a diagonal staircase. So this plane, plane, just the math word for like a flat surface in 3D space. This plane has a slope of like 1.4 blocks up for each block forward. And so I tried to do the same thing where I created a second staircase, that meets this one at a right angle, and then found all the blocks above it that were within their pathfinding cube, colored them green. Same thing, found all the blocks beneath it within their like cube pathfinding shape and colored those red. And then just have some little command blocks here that let me count how many are in each section. And this was kind of weird because it was still more likely to be uphill than downhill, but the likelihood wasn't like 2 to 1 anymore. It was 3 to 2, but it just means they're 50% more likely to walk uphill on this surface than downhill. Interestingly, that means if you had like a mountain whose side was like a diagonal staircase like this, mobs would be less likely to walk uphill on it than if you had a flat-sided pyramid mountain. I also did an experiment where like the invisible staircase that kind of defines where the cutoff between uphill, like, oh man, how do I even say this? So the plane here is the cutoff between which blocks cause them to move uphill and which blocks will cause them to pathfind downhill when they select those blocks to pathfind to. The theory I'm just kind of assuming is that when they try to pathfind, they're picking a totally random point within this cube shape, checking if it's a full solid block, and if it is, they try to get as close to it as they can. And then to test my like invisible orange staircase meets normal staircase at right angle theory, I don't have a good thing to call it. To test that, I made a portion of that invisible staircase solid blocks. The idea being, you know, I can throw a bunch of pigs on here. What are you kids going to? Oh, well, that's unusual. Did I put something solid too close to them? Oh, that's very interesting. Last time I ran this green area was not filled in. I only had it outlined. So you had solid blocks and just air blocks above. But this time, and when I had it like that, the pigs just kind of hovered around this little white line here. But now they're going up. I wonder if that means when they pick the solid block they're trying to pathfind to, if it's beneath air, then that creature will be like, oh, okay, I'll just try to pathfind to it. But if the solid block they're trying to pathfind to is not beneath air, the pathfinding algorithm will like search upwards until it finds air, and then have the creature try to pathfind to that spot. Oh, that's so cool. That'd explain why. Oh, okay, so that would explain why the pigs tended to bunch up on the very tops of these mountains more than I expected at first. Yeah, in that case, like this whole like subsection of the orange and red areas should actually be counted towards the green, not towards orange and red. Well, I guess I can make a video where I'm learning stuff on the fly instead of teaching new stuff. But that means I have to go rewrite the code that I used to generate that color map. Okay, so here's the new color coding. So this takes into account now that when a creature like picks a block to try to pathfind to, it will look further upwards in the same column of blocks if there's no air block above the one it tried to pick to pathfind to. You can see it's a lot more green, which, you know, means a much higher tendency to walk up hills. So it looks like the flat areas that are like locally speaking, the highest point. Yeah, those are the areas that the that the creatures like to bunch up on. And then just so you know, we're all clear with what's going on here. If we put a bunch of pigs, yeah, here, you can see it's not like this one. Here, you know, we put them on the white line and they immediately like sprint up super high up. Oh man, okay, so here's something to try to wrap your brain around. If a pig tries to pathfind to this block, it's solid, so it works, but it will then search upwards until it hits air, meaning it'll pick this block as like the actual destination for the pig to try to get close to. The pig will essentially just try to like sit at the spot that brings it closest to that destination. That's so weird. That means they're actually on like a perfect staircase where, you know, beneath it is filled with solid blocks. They'd be 4 to 5 times more likely to move uphill as downhill. What is interesting though about the air block thing is that means caves actually affect how likely they are to try to pathfind upwards. So for instance, if you had, you know, pig hanging out here and little guy picked like this block to try to pathfind to, if this were solid, the pig would actually then, you know, probably walk up to say about here. But I believe in this scenario, it actually set its destination to be that like right there, and you know, it actually kind of crawled downwards and then up into the cave. What's also nice too is after changing the code here to take the whole air block thing into account, it actually runs like 5 times faster than it did before. All right, y'all, I think those results are good enough for me. My name's Chris. Thanks for watching.